in California, we have cats called Savannah cats, and they're a mix of serval with a domestic cat.
It eats chickens.
It's the size of a yellow lab or something. Yeah.
I'll never forget. He had a hind quarter of a chicken, and this leopard is sitting in front of us, and we were having an old fashioned. We were gonna go fishing the next day. Hold on, I got to feed. I forget the name. And he kind of did this. And
Pablo.
Yeah. This thing's. I don't know. He's not gonna attack me. And then all the neighbors were like, "What is that? Am I safe?" Welcome to Under the Knife, the podcast where we cut into topics such as politics, life advice, and medicine, and we do this with the precision of a licensed orthopedic surgeon. I'm your host, Dr. Craig Green, an orthopedic surgeon and elected public official. Trey Engels, welcome to Under the Knife.
Thank you, Craig.
We'll dissect life. So, My kids think you're in the CIA because you travel so much. Where'd you come in from this morning?
Just came in from Miami this morning.
Okay. And you and I were in Snowmass. Was it last week or 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, it's kind of run together.
Did
I think it was 2 weeks ago.
Didn't you go to Japan or somewhere?
No, I went to Orange County, California
That's
from
right.
Colorado, and then back home to San Francisco. And then I was here last weekend.
That's right.
And then flew to Miami Tuesday and then came back today.
That's right. So you got miles.
Yeah. I'd move around a good bit.
So I love the story. And you and I have been friends since high school, really. But, one of the things we talk about on this podcast a lot is how disappointment can turn into something way better. And I remember when my dad wrote you a letter for vet school. And to this day, I would say one of the best things that ever happened to you was not getting into vet school.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. In hindsight, I'm very happy. I'm not treating fleas and ticks every day. I tried twice. I think your dad wrote 2 recommendation letters,
Right.
2 years in a row, and didn't get in, and didn't know what I was going to do. But I'm glad it worked out the way I did. We worked at Pennington
Right.
together.
That's right.
And then got into research and just stuck with it.
So tell people what you do in the research world.
Now I've kind of specialized. I run clinical trials all over the world for medical device companies, and kind of have a specialty getting them approved with FDA or with Japanese regulatory bodies or European regulatory bodies.
So when you do that, how do you find the person in another country to say, hey, this is what we want to do?
Well, I worked 10 years at a big company, the market leader for heart stents.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the devices I've done since then have all been wires, catheters, stents. And so I knew the doctors globally through the cardiology stent company that I worked at.
And I would say you're a relationship guru, so you probably just maintained a lot of those as it passed into the next thing, right?
Yeah, and friends of friends, right? There's always somebody that knows somebody.
Right. So, and tell people about what the one you just did and kind of
Current company.
Yeah, current company,
Sure.
the device, and even tell them a story about the Harvard vascular surgeon. I think that's cool.
Oh, okay. Dr. Dua. So LimFlow is the current company, and pretty direct name. But what we did is we vascularized the veins of patients who needed amputations. And so we did first in human work in Singapore. We did our European trials across Europe, and then did a U.S. feasibility study, U.S. pivotal trial. It was just published in New England Journal, and then the company was bought by a company named Inari Medical, and that's what I was going down to Orange County for. Mm-hmm. All closed in November, so pretty recent stuff.
Goes fast, huh?
It does. But amazing outcome. These patients had no other option besides amputation. Had to be adjudicated by vascular surgeons and an interventionalist, like a radiologist or cardiologist that works in the peripheral. And then we took them and did what we were doing, which is turning their veins into arteries, and it worked. We had 70% or greater of the leg saved, and all these people had to get amputated otherwise.
It's crazy that somebody thought of that idea and then made it happen.
Yeah, and usually these inventions are kind of first cousins to something else, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think people start from scratch. Mm-hmm. And there was a startup out in Silicon Valley where I live, and they did the same thing but in the heart. And so they took the coronary veins and arterialized them. Medtronic thought it was a fantastic idea, bought the company. The chief medical officer was really intrigued because he was a cardiologist from England. When they went into clinical trials, half the patients died, so they stopped it right away.
Makes sense.
Yeah. But what I like about him is he said, but half of them lived. And so he just looked at the other side of the coin. He said, what if we went to a part of the body that was less critical? What if we got away from the heart? And that's how.
First cousin.
Yeah. That's how we became a company.
Well, I heard a quote recently, and I like quotes, that optimists are usually successful and pessimists are usually correct. It's not untrue.
It's easy to be negative and be correct.
Yeah.
You see that? I see it all the time because this is my fourth startup. You're doing something crazy, and most people want to wait until it's proven,
Right.
it's safe, and so you have to kind of ignore a lot of negativity, a lot of pessimism.
Well, and that's the necessity is the mother of invention, right? Somebody sees a problem. I never forget, I have a friend in the oil business. He invented some valve. And at the time, I was trying to create a plate or something in orthopedics. And I said, hey, how do you invent things? He goes, well, it's when you have to solve some problem that no one else has solved, and you think there's got to be a better way.
Yeah. It comes out of small conversations. I was at my wife's Christmas party this year, and I met a friend of hers husband who was a surgeon. I'm not sure, a general surgeon, transplant surgeon, I guess. And he was talking about a big problem he
I'm not
has.
very sensitive. If you're about to,
No. But he said a big problem they have is how many people, this is UCSF, San Francisco, how many patients they turn away from kidney transplant because of calcified arteries. And so I asked if he had thought about atherectomy, and his face it didn't register. He didn't know what I was talking about. So I mentioned Shockwave's technology, which is lithotripsy for the vessels. And again, he didn't know what I was talking about. So I called a friend of mine who's a vascular surgeon at San Francisco, and he pro-conned it and thought one of them was a great idea. So they're trying that on patients. And I told him, if not, that's a company. And that's how we start.
That's how companies get started. Yeah. And lives get changed. I mean,
For sure.
how many limbs do you think y'all have saved so far?
Probably about 500, 600.
Wow. And it's just now taking off.
Yeah. We just got FDA approval in September. So the meeting I had in Miami just now was bringing the first set of U.S. doctors together to train them to use it commercially in the U.S.
So it's going to ramp up.
It will.
Now tell them a story about the Harvard.
Yeah. So this is all just kind of small world, but I was at a meeting in New York, and a surgeon from MGH, from Mass General in Boston, said, "Are you from Louisiana?" And I said, "I am." And she was like, "Do you know Senator Cassidy?" And I said, "Well, a friend of a friend." And she's like, I need a Republican physician in the Senate to co-author or sign this bill that I have that would basically, it's called the ARC Act, and what they're trying to do is get Medicare to fund angiograms of legs prior to amputation, just to see if the leg is salvageable.
Because you need an angiogram prior to your device, right?
Yeah, prior to, or it may not even need our device. It may be a much simpler solution that they could find, but very often, you know how orthopedists are. Sometimes they'll just cut off a leg.
They just cut it off.
But anyway, so I reached out to you, knowing that you knew Senator Cassidy.
Yeah.
You reached out to him. We connected. Dr. Dua from MGH, and I think they had their first meeting last week.
Nice.
So it's off and running.
And just to think that, just talk about how relationships and ideas impact people that you'll never even realize. I mean, how many limbs will that save? Just the conversations
I would say
that were had. Thousands.
Yeah, it could be 50, 60,000 a year.
Right.
In the U.S.
Amazing.
Yeah.
In the United States alone.
Yeah.
That's
huge.
crazy.
Hopefully it goes somewhere. Hopefully the bill gets signed.
Well, what's interesting is you get to see almost like raising a child from
for sure.
Conception, I guess, to graduation. And it's for products that impact people.
Yeah, for sure. My claim to fame, I guess, is Xience, a coronary stent that's still the market-leading product out there. I ran all the trials for that device in 2006 to 2007.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I started doing startups. We made a stent that was so good we couldn't iterate it. And the big company, just was maybe more of a marketing and sales machine at that point, because we had advanced our technology to a point that the next generation products weren't any better.
Right.
That is still.
Does that happen often, or they continue to evolve?
It's usually every 2 or 3 years they get iterated. But since 2007, what is that? That's 15 years or so. That's still the market-leading product globally for coronary stents and using it peripherally as well.
How many lives have that saved?
A huge amount. Yeah. I know my grandmother has one. My mom has one. It's all in my own family.
So let's switch gears a little bit, and we both have a daughter named Hadley.
Yeah.
That's something we share.
What are the chances?
We vacation together now for 20 years. But let's talk about our spouses. So your wife is, I'm just going to call her the CEO of a global company. I know she's like CEO in waiting, but
a rising star. Yeah.
Tell them about Natalie.
Yeah. So Natalie's from Baton Rouge as well, interior designer from LSU. When we lived here, she did office furniture, home decor, kind of what you would think of interiors. We moved to Nashville, and she worked at an architectural firm and had some big projects. She redesigned Stein Eriksen Lodge in Deer Valley for NBC to broadcast for the Winter Olympics. She remodeled the Grand Ole Opry while we lived in Nashville. I'm always antsy and ready to go, and so we had been in Nashville, and I'm like, let's move. And she said she'll do San Francisco or New York, and she wanted to work at a company.
I remember I had a conference, and I said, do y'all want to meet us? And you get out there, and I think we were in Napa.
Yes.
And you look around and you're like, I think we're going to move here. And you did. You've been there ever since.
Yeah, it was a year later. So she gave me, New York or San Francisco. We took off to San Francisco, and she had her eyes set on Gensler. They've been the #1 architectural firm in the world for the last 30, 40 years.
How many employees?
8,000 employees.
Wow.
And she's worked her way up. 20 years later, she's on the leadership.
Next in line for CEO.
Leadership, yeah. She's
That's
the
amazing.
top of the company.
So we were at dinner the other night, and we were talking, I don't know, there's a lot of conversations I've had recently about narcissism. And I thought we had a conversation that would be fruitful to have here. I guess I've been accused of it, and I've worked hard on myself. And so it's kind of it's hard to, it's not like you have, shingles where this is what you have. It's like kind of, I don't know, a psychiatric diagnosis. And it's also like body odor. The people that have it really don't realize that they have it, right? Other people have to let them know. So I've worked hard on myself, and I still wonder, okay, am I? I don't want to be, but I thought you had an interesting take on it. And so, and then there's your wife who's super successful sitting right there too. And so enlighten people about our conversation. I have a little follow-up with you on that as well.
Yeah, I probably should have used this opportunity to read the definition of narcissism, because that's what I told Craig, is I don't really know the definition, but I think that there's two sides to every coin. And I think the answer most people want to say is like, no, you're not a narcissist, but I assume that's more of a negative point of view on a certain personality type. And I think being a surgeon, being a politician, being a father, being all the things you've done and accomplished, business owner, I don't think you could do those things if you didn't have an unrealistic self-confidence. And I think most of the things I've done, my wife's done, our friends have done, are because they do have a unrealistic self-confidence. And I think, or maybe even unjustified, but I think just the will to win and the
reach beyond your grasp.
Exactly. I think that's the positive side of it.
Well, I think too, if you go to an orthopedic surgeon, for instance, you want him to have the confidence that he's going to be able to do what he says he's going to do.
Yeah. Or at least try as hard as he can. Yeah.
So there's a book, and I would encourage everybody to read it. And this guy's got a bunch of them. He's got a series. It's called Surrounded By. One of them is Surrounded by Narcissists. The guy's I think he's a psychologist. Surrounded by psychopaths, surrounded by idiots, surrounded by bad bosses. I mean, it's a great series. But he does go into something I think you alluded to. It's not a yes or no question. It's not entirely binary. And what they actually have is these, I think, 30 questions, or maybe 20, I forget. I do the audio book, so I need to get the real book. Yeah. And you're supposed to take this test and maybe have someone close to you take it. And like the average population is going to score, let's say there's 20 things, or I think there's 25 actually. Let's say you score 7 or 8. Well, that's just normal. You have confidence that you can do your job. That's not a bad thing. But then if you get over 20, and it's different in Sweden than it is in London or whatever, like this is clinical, you're a clinical narcissist, right? And that gets back to, you have to have some confidence in order to continue to reach for higher things. And that doesn't make you a narcissist. And I think the more I thought about it is, what drives me is to give and help other people. And I think narcissists how can that get back to me?
Yeah, I have the impression that there's a victim mentality part of it, where the narcissist brings it back to something was done wrong to them and they're a victim. And I can't say that I've ever seen that in you or our friend group. Yeah.
Well, thank you. But I thought your take was really interesting, and because it was like, well, you kind of pointed to me and pointed to Natalie, and like, y'all are both really successful. So, and it was funny because she and I were like, no, you're not. No, you're not.
Stop it.
Yeah. So you probably get to see a lot of high confident types all around the world.
For sure.
Are there different cultural impacts of those, or are they kind of?
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. Oh yeah, I mean, I work with a lot of physicians, surgeons, and a German surgeon is very different than a Greek or a Portuguese surgeon. You know, the Southern Europeans will have you to their house, more like Louisiana, right?
Yeah.
They'll have you to their house and want to cook something, and it takes a long time to break in with the Germans. It's more like a New Yorker and someone from the Northeast. So cultural issues are big, I think, and then you layer that on top of just
Rules and regulations.
Yeah, or even professional expectations, and it's complex. But you see patterns, and you know how to work with people and with patterns.
Well, pattern recognition is pretty much all of life, right?
Sure.
And so, what do you do about the language barriers?
Everybody speaks English.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I thought I would learn something. You know, I lived in France for a while. We lived there for 4 months, and Natalie picked up a lot of it because she had it here in school, and I was traveling to all the different countries over there, and yeah, it's really not I don't think that important. I mean, I think you need the small words to show you're trying, but
even in Brazil, right? They welcome the research that when the United States comes.
Yeah, and I don't follow Portuguese. I mean, but I know enough to say that.
Right. So and Hadley, your daughter, she went to a bilingual high school, right?
Yeah, she is bilingual. She's I guess fluent in Spanish. She learned to read in Spanish. So blonde hair, blue eyed little girl with parents from Baton Rouge, and she learned to read and write in Spanish. She was probably 6 months or a year late learning to read in English. Thought we had maybe made a mistake at first, but it's pretty fantastic to travel with her. Yeah.
It's there now, huh?
Yeah,
the brain's a sponge.
She can negotiate all our souvenirs.
I still have that. My daughter Hadley came out and stayed with y'all, and she was looking at Cal or something. And I think that y'all did the little, what are they called?
Oh yeah, we did the Lime scooters after went to Stanford.
But they had to have a credit card on it, and so it was like. Then she went to UCLA. And she rode around on your credit card on those things, and finally they had to be like, "You can't do that. That's stealing."
At least they're only $2 or $3 rides. Yeah, I think it was her Whole Food trips to go get sushi. Yeah.
Right. So thank you. I owe you some money plus interest on that.
Yeah, it was worth it. The story has lived on.
It sure has. So let's say this company goes on, but then you're a startup guy. How do you pick your next thing?
Well, there's press releases about our acquisition, and recruiters start calling right away. So there's emails and there's phone calls, and there's friends that maybe have asked me to do things last year that I wasn't available for that have followed up to say, do you want to? And so I'm just waiting for something that's interesting or more interesting than what I'm doing for the company that bought us. Mm-hmm. For now, I want to see this thing kind of get a strong hold in the market, and make sure it doesn't just die on the vine.
But you get to choose what sounds interesting to you.
Yeah, definitely. I at this point, it's all about choice.
Right.
Yeah. The last one was embolic protection for TAVR, so putting a little catheter in the radial artery and going up and basically 2 little windsocks in the carotid arteries just to protect the brain while they're changing the aortic valve and prevent stroke. And that one got bought by Boston Scientific. This one got bought by Inari. So it's enough of credibility now where you can just kind of watch and see what's out there.
So each time you're kind of second or third on board, is that right?
Usually, yeah. Usually when there's a device. So the engineers, they need engineers first. They need somebody to make it.
Right.
But then pretty soon you need to test it in humans.
So would you ever be the starter? Or you know your lane, you know your role?
Perhaps. That was a discussion I had at the bar last night. Good friend of mine, a vascular surgeon at Baylor in Houston, was talking to me about an incubator, which is basically just looking at different ideas and starting stuff. And he's a really interesting guy. Costa Rican, trained in Germany, practices in Houston, president of the Vascular Surgery Society for Latin America. So he's got a lot of breadth and sees a lot and hears a lot. So maybe we'll see.
We'll see. It depends on if it's interesting to you.
It was worth 2 old fashions last night.
I'm sure the second half of that conversation was more interesting than the first.
Yeah.
So, if you had to look back at, say, when we graduated college together, 96 to now, coming up on 30 years almost, hard to believe. Huh?
I was 97. I needed a 5th year.
Victory lap.
Yes.
Well, you got to. I would encourage kids these days, try to squeeze 4 into 5.
Yeah.
What's the hurry?
I enjoyed all 5 years at LSU. Yes.
But what advice would you give yourself looking back?
It's exactly what you just said. I tell my daughter all the time that there's not a rush.
Don't rush.
And I was in a rush. I was in a hurry to work. I think we met. We were pages in the Senate in high school, and we worked at the Biomedical Research Center all through college. And you were going to medical school, and I was trying to figure out what was next. I'm going to grad school, and I never thought about going to Europe backpacking for a summer, or working at a ski resort, or my daughter's talking about going to Hawaii and working on a boat. And I'm encouraging her. I'm like, and do it. That sounds like a great thing. And when you're 50 and you're looking back, what's an extra year?
What's an extra year, yeah. What's interesting is my daughter Hadley, she's about to graduate, and I said, what's the job thing looking like? And she goes, oh, nobody gets a job for at least 3 or 4 months. And I'm thinking, what?
We were lining ours up like before, one to the next.
But, good for them if they get to.
Yeah, maybe depends on if the credit card works or not.
She might need Uncle Trey's credit card.
Yes.
But she'll have to go on scooter.
Mm-hmm.
So is your wife having to travel a lot now with her job?
Good. Not as much as me, but a good bit. A lot of their meetings are international. Just had a board meeting in Mexico City that she was at. She's en route here. She's flying into New Orleans tonight. Okay. So she and my Hadley are coming in tonight.
Check out the condo?
Exactly.
Nice.
We're moving in tomorrow.
I heard it was pretty quick. Everything happened pretty quick.
It's been a big construction site the last 7 days.
Yeah.
So taking an 1840s French Quarter condo and modernizing it so we can move in.
Is the moving in this weekend?
Yes.
So does it feel like the inspector's coming to grade it if she's the interior designer?
Yes. Yeah. The contractor sent me a picture. I was at a kind of a cocktail party, and I looked down, and he painted a room the wrong color. And
get it right.
Yes. I sent her drawings back. I'm like, oh, this has to be fixed.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And it got fixed?
We'll see. I don't know yet. It was blue last night. It was not supposed to be.
What was it supposed to be?
White.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's not a minor mistake.
No. He was very proud of his blue room. But yeah, she will come in and she'll find all the misses.
Making it better. That's how her eyes and her brain work, right?
For sure.
Tell us about, you've inspired me throughout the years for a couple of books. You're a master negotiator. Tell us how that works, or what the book was about.
Never Split the Difference.
Yeah.
That was a good book about hostage negotiation, and that when you're a hostage negotiator, you can't split the difference, right? Everybody else in negotiations kind of,
let's split it.
Yeah, the price is 10, I say 5, but we do 750. And if you're negotiating for someone's life, that's not an option. So you have to find what you're after and what I'm after, and how do we both win? Right. And I think that's the idea I subscribe to, I guess, going into a negotiation, is that it doesn't have to be win or loss. Let's just find how we both get what we want.
Well, give them some examples. If the listeners don't know, you and I and a third guy and two other partners own a couple restaurants we'll put a plug for.
Yeah.
I'll let you list all the locations, but Fire and Ice. But tell them how you've negotiated some of the stuff with that. Let's see, it's in Anaheim, South Lake Tahoe,
Boston. And getting ready to open on Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco.
Is that going to be March, you think?
Should be.
So if you're in any of those places, go check it out.
Yeah.
Be our secret shopper. But tell them how some of those things came about.
I would say the biggest negotiations that are fresh in my mind were during COVID, right? You had different types of situations with landlords, with staff, and it was not a good time to be a restaurant owner. There was the Boston landlord was particularly difficult and didn't want to do percent rent. That's what the California landlords all agreed to percent rent. So their rent was based on a percent of our sales. So if we were closed that month and there were no sales, there was no rent. If sales went well, they benefited as well. And that did happen. Tahoe had a strange effect where it seems like all the San Francisco people went to their second homes in Tahoe and drank at our restaurant, which was fantastic.
Great. Yeah.
And so we ended up in a situation where I think there was probably $150,000 of outstanding rent on the Boston location. Our restaurant wasn't open. We were determined not to pay rent. The landlord thought we should pay rent. And we had to go to the point of just being willing to walk away from the restaurant for us to reach an agreement. And so we ended up, they still are getting their money. But
during COVID, right?
During COVID. But we added 2 more years to the lease once COVID was over. But we didn't pay for the time that when COVID was happening in the restaurant.
When there was no revenue.
Yeah, but that's an example of they got what they wanted, we got what we wanted. And we didn't split the difference.
Didn't split the difference. I think there was one too with was it the Fisherman's Wharf with the prior sushi owner or something?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, there was the location that we're going into. Hopefully, this is a pitch for the restaurant. It's a glass box on the end of the pier that, if you're standing in the restaurant and you look to the right, you see the Bay Bridge covered in lights. Straight out the window is Alcatraz, and to the left is the Golden Gate, and you're on the water. So it's a good spot. The previous tenant, the restaurant wasn't doing well there, but she used it as her social place to have parties, to entertain a wealthy San Francisco Chinese person. And we had to negotiate our way into the location. I don't remember the details right now.
I just remember we'll wait 6 months or a year and a half.
And then COVID happened. Everybody ended up kind of waiting for a while.
Yeah.
But I
guess
you
definitely have a
lucky
line for that. What? I know you're a big reader. What are you reading these days?
You're giving me too much credit about being a big reader. I think I'm a good skimmer.
Skimmer? Hey.
Yeah, a lot of times I think I can read a little
Maybe
bit of the
better
book.
Than being a reader.
And I'm like, oh, I get it. Most recent was... I'm trying to think of how this title. It's a popular book right now. Die with Nothing.
Yeah.
Have you read it?
It's in my queue.
Okay. You get it pretty quickly. I mean, first of all, it was written by wealthy people because people
easy for them to say.
Yes, but the big takeaway I had was that people inherit money too late. I think when there's money to be inherited, especially now with people living into their 80s. Their kids are inheriting their money in their 60s, and they really needed it in their 30s. And so I think having a kid that's growing up, I think more about trying to help her young and not trying to hold on to everything for when I'm old and can't enjoy it.
And we have a big 50th coming up this year. We're going to go on a safari with our families. And interestingly, I was visiting with a guy once recently, and these are good problems to have. Let's just admit that. But he said he told his kids, and now they're bringing boyfriends and girlfriends or spouses and stuff. I mean, it's the next evolution. He said, yeah, I told my kids, look, this is all y'all's money. It's just whether or not I get to be there for it. And I shared that with my kids on a recent vacation. And you know what they all said? We'd rather this than a pile. Because it's the experience, right?
Yeah.
That connects our neurons of our brain to the whatever is our heart, soul, emotion feeling,
Well, I'm glad they voted that way because I feel like
I might have voted us off the island.
I was gonna say I get to benefit with this as well.
Yeah,
so that's good.
But I think you live that way too. I mean, you're a relationship guy, you're an experience guy, and not let's see what kind of number we can get to guy.
No, for sure. Yeah, I mentioned this condo in the French Quarter. That's because of having a success with the company selling, you either have money in the bank or you get to do something where you enjoy it. So I thought buy something at home. Louisiana, I've been gone since '99, but I come back here a lot. Have an anchor in the state, and then I don't know, get to enjoy money instead of just having it sitting in a.
It's a good problem.
It is.
It's a good problem. Well, what are two big pieces of advice you're going to give your daughter when she starts her first day of college? We're going to kind of land the plane with this.
I don't know if I'm ready for it.
That's
let me
top,
think it.
Just off the top of your head is usually the best kind.
I think to be open for experiences, and not to take it too seriously, and a little bit of background both. When I think back to my college experience, I don't really remember the test that I did well on or didn't do well, or the class that was an A or a B, but the experiences, going to the a road trip to A&M for the football game, or a beach trip with friends or something that really stick out in my mind.
Some you don't remember, right?
There are some of those as well. Yeah, there's some I hear stories about. But I think and then being open to what the future holds as well, because I think an 18-year-old going to college,
you can't map it out.
I have no idea what they want to do in life and career. Right. I didn't.
Right.
I'm glad I'm not a veterinarian.
Right.
I can have a pet.
Can you talk about some of the pets you have? I don't know if you can or can't.
Sure. Yeah, I think what Craig's alluding to is we have 2 cats that are...
Let me back up and say we were fishing in Fouchon, and I picked you up from the airport, and you had a cat crate. And I said, I got a surprise. And I said, okay, looks like you probably brought a cat or a dog. Only what I saw looked like a leopard.
It was an African serval. Yeah, it was a wild serval. Yeah, so we have a farm in Mississippi where it's legal to have a serval. It's illegal in California. But in California, we have cats called Savannah cats, and they're a mix of serval with a domestic cat. And they're considered domestic when they're 50-50 or less.
Yeah, breed them down, right?
Yeah, but it's kind of like a mule, I guess, but they're tall. You end up with a house cat that's maybe the size of
that eats chickens.
Yeah, it's the size of a yellow lab or something. Yeah.
I'll never forget. He had a hind quarter of a chicken, and this leopard is sitting in front of us, and we were having an old fashioned. We're gonna go fishing the next day. Hold on, I got to feed. I forget the name. And he kind of did this.
Pablo.
Yeah.
And
Pablo.
You had a friend.
Like we were in Africa already, and like this thing's. I don't know. He's not gonna attack me. And then all the neighbors were like, "What is that? Am I safe?"
We had him. I had him tied on the porch. I forgot. We were cooking etouffee, and your friend came and he couldn't get upstairs because
Pablo was guarding.
Pablo was meeting him at the top of the stairs. Yeah,
we didn't have a drug deal going on. It wasn't. The serval wasn't guarding our stash.
Maybe something you don't know about that fishing trip is you let me sleep in the bedroom with Pablo. Mm-hmm. That was a new experience for me. He had never been that close, and I went to bed, and in the middle of the night, he jumped up like all fours on top of me, and I thought, oh, this is where I die, right?
This is where it's going to end, in Fouchon, Louisiana.
Yeah, he just curled up like a dog at the foot of the bed.
Good thing he wasn't hungry.
Yeah, it worked out okay.
That's great.
But it woke me up. I had to
and
think
it's
about
crazy that different states, they have to be bred to certain levels.
Yeah. Having a zoology degree, I find it interesting.
Yeah.
The genetics of it, the background, and it's a full-time thing for my dad and his wife. And so in retirement, they've got a fun thing going on.
Well, y'all will have fun finding some social media clips of what those are to match with this, because I wouldn't call it frightening. It's not what you expect when you're like, oh my gosh, that's a house pet.
Yeah.
So
it's a different thing.
Well, Trey, thanks for taking the time.
This was a lot of fun.
From San Francisco, you come to Baton Rouge to do a podcast. So good luck with the condo, and I'll be seeing you soon. We're I guess we're also friend-in-laws because our wives are friends.
Yeah. I don't. When's the next trip? I guess we'll see each other.
Next week, Washington, Mardi Gras.
See you in D.C.
That's right. Thanks for being on.
All right.
Appreciate you.
Thank you for joining us today, and a big thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in to this surgical exploration of politics, healthcare, and life. I've been your host, Dr. Craig Green. Remember to stay informed, stay sharp, and join us next time to see which of life's topics we'll dissect under the knife.